Pardon me for looking like I just got out of a pool or the shower or something, but that's because I actually did just get out of the shower because it is literally 97 degrees outside. And let me tell you, mowing a lawn in 97 degree weather, it's not fun. So now that I'm properly showered and shaved, it is time to actually get back into making a video. And today I'm actually going to get something very interesting for you guys. I am actually going to do a reaction video. I've done a couple in the past, and well, I'm actually going to end up doing one today, and it's because, well, this one is definitely going to get interesting. So there's a guy on the iTunes Fanboy podcast who goes by Tabby Pears. He's the co-host on that podcast, who happens to really hate the iPhone that I am currently using, the XS, in my case the XS Max, but that counts as the XS too because it's literally just, well, a bigger XS. He hates that phone so much that, take a look here, he made a dedicated nearly 20-minute video just to talk about how much he truly hates the iPhone XS and XS Max. So because he hates that phone so much, and I just happen to daily drive a XS Max, and I've been doing it for about 2 years at this point, I'm kind of curious. You know what? What do I think of this? So let's compare a XS hater to a person who has been loving the XS Max ever since he's gotten it. So, alright, yeah, you can see where this is going. Cue the intro. Alright, so this is Tabby Pears' YouTube channel. This is where he makes most of his videos. It's most of the type of videos that I've noticed he makes is he likes to talk about getting new devices, first impressions, and, well, just in general impressions altogether, as well as telling a few stories like what we're about to watch and various other things too. So, yeah, interesting channel. Please check it out after this. I need to give him credit because we're about to watch his work, so give him the credit that he deserves, please. Alright, anywho, let's get into this reaction video right here.
I've been wanting to make this video for 2 years. This is why I hate the iPhone XS and the issues that it has. First, the iPhone XS is unreliable. My first ever experience with the iPhone XS Max in July 2019 was shortly followed by a display failure 2 days into owning the phone.
Ooh, that's
I returned
rough.
that unit and got a brand new one from T-Mobile a second time. I would not have purchased the device in the first place if it weren't for me switching to T-Mobile, and they had a deal where I traded in an iPhone 6 and got a crazy amount of money for it. I had a XS Max from July 2019 to December 2019, and in that time, it almost left me without a phone 2 times, and Apple refused to help. The first time was in September 2019. I was on a vacation, and the phone turned off and refused to turn back on. The phone decided to start working on the car ride home about 2 days later, and the same exact day as that happened, the iPhone 11 series was released. The second time was in November 2019. I was at one of my friend's house, and my phone randomly shut off. And it did not turn on for about 30 minutes, even after putting it on the plug. The phone shut off around 60% battery and turned on with about 75% from being plugged in.
So that was not a battery issue.
My iPhone XS Max also had multiple other issues, which drove me into buying a Galaxy S10e in December 2019.
Okay. The Samsung Galaxy S10e was actually a decent phone. This was one of the last decent phones Samsung actually made before they basically become, well, ultimate iPhone copycat version of Samsung versus the truly unique. So that's that's a good phone at least. That's a decent phone.
One of those issues was the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth being very weak. Even compared to my iPhone 6S, that device's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth barely even functioned.
Okay, so actually I have an explanation as to why the wireless might have been weak, including Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and, well, mostly Wi-Fi and cellular. It's actually because of the wireless modems that the XS has compared to the 6 or 6S, whatever phone he just mentioned. Ever since the XS and XS Max, as well as the XR, Apple has actually gone exclusively in on Intel's modems. However, Intel's modems aren't exactly the best compared to Qualcomm's. The reason why they did switch to Intel only, however, for their wireless modems is because Qualcomm wanted to do something that was really screwing over Apple, and so they basically decided, screw you, because you're screwing us. we're just going to go all in on Intel, even though Intel has some weaker modems. So this might explain that issue. And this is actually a problem also in the 11 series as well. But once you get up to the 12 series with the 5G modems, those are Qualcomm-based modems. And so the 12 and 13s, they have the Qualcomm modems, which are much better than the Intel modems. And don't worry, the XS Max as well, XS in general, isn't the only iPhone that has this issue. In fact, it's not even the only smartphone that has this issue.
Issue on my router, as it did the same exact thing at my uncle's house. And he had a different router, different internet provider, and I was very close to both of the routers. My device also had display issues. At random times, the digitizer would go out, and it wouldn't come back on for a while. This did not occur after a job. This would occur randomly. And only about half the digitizer would go out, not the entire digitizer, for whatever reason. There was no visible damage on the display other than pretty light scratches from normal use.
Okay.
When I brought these issues up to Apple, they claimed they were not able to reproduce the issues, and therefore the device had no issues in their eyes.
That is a bad way to look at someone who's having problems with the device. Just because you can't recreate the issues on the spot, like oftentimes when I come across an issue and I want to demo it, somehow all of a sudden it just perfectly manages to work. Like, oh yeah, I can't get this issue to recreate because, well, now, we got to perform our best because we got support here and we don't want support to treat us badly because, well, yeah, such and such like that. So, yeah, it is a common weird coincidence how somehow whenever we're having issues with devices, whenever we try to recreate them in front of people, it usually doesn't like to do that. It doesn't like to recreate the issues. So, yeah, it's a bit weird how things do that. I've been lucky where when I've had issues with my AirPods, that's the only device I've ever sent in for repair, basically. But when I've had issues with those, thank goodness Apple has managed to determine that, yeah, something is clearly wrong with them and such like that. But just because you can't recreate the issue doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that is something that the Apple employees really should have taken into account. Just because they can't reproduce the issue on the spot, that doesn't mean the problem doesn't exist. What they should do is hold on to the device a little longer and test it out a little more, because given it enough time, it's going to come back. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Was unable to trust my own personal phone that I pretty much paid for, and Apple refused to help me with the issues. I was able to get a replacement unit in January of 2020 after the back glass cracked. I then used it for about a month before I got constant pop-ups telling me to sign into my iCloud multiple times a day, every day.
Okay. That type of bug is not a XS Max specific issue. That is literally a System OS software bug. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, Apple makes different versions of the same operating system for each and every smartphone because, well, they make so few, they can actually do that. However, the core operating system is still the same across all devices. It's just certain features are what's locked or what's going to change. However, iCloud is a feature on basically all iPhones. So if your iPhone XS has been having this issue, I reckon that this isn't common on just your XS at the time. I'm willing to bet that multiple iOS devices have had this issue at the same time you were having it due to a software update, for example. But then again, I don't even know how often you update your phones because evidently you on your podcasts, you and Teddy Maggart from the iTunes Fanboy on that podcast, you guys clearly sound like you absolutely do not like updating your devices, but I'm willing to bet that was the case. Okay, I'm just willing to bet that it's a software bug that any iPhone could have experienced, especially if it's iCloud.
Fix after a restore, and the issues persisted even after trading the phone to my mom for an iPhone 8 Plus. I then got the iPhone XS Max back after it had other issues, and I traded it in immediately about 2 hours after getting a replacement unit for an iPhone 11 Pro in July 2020, which may have been the best phone-related decision I've ever made. I used an iPhone XS in October 2020. I had it for less than 2 months before trading it in for an iPhone 12 mini to Apple. In the short amount of time I used it, the device's battery health went down to 94% with less than 150 charge cycles. For reference here, my iPhone 13 Pro was at 130 charge cycles with 100% battery health.
I do want to say, though, the battery capacities actually will affect degradation. The smaller the battery, believe it or not, the faster it actually degrades. So in this case, is he talking? Oh shoot, did he mention the 11 Pro or is he talking about the 13 Pro that I see on screen here? Either way, those phones, both of those phones, actually have larger batteries than the XS Max and the XS in general. So because of that, they're not going to degrade as fast because, well, it's got a larger capacity. Is it unusual that it degraded that fast? Okay, if I'm guessing, maybe it's an isolated instance, but then again, we gotta watch the rest of this video to figure that out. But so far, I'm guessing that might be an isolated instance, and for it to degrade faster than these other two devices that you mentioned, the 13 Pro and the 11, yeah, it's going to degrade faster because it's a physically smaller battery. And that's just how it works. Physically smaller batteries actually degrade faster.
And my iPhone 10 was at 100 charge cycles with 100% battery health back in 2018.
What's this? Different 10, but still good reference. Okay, let me study this here. Wait, hold on a sec. What? Something about this doesn't look right. Yeah, how did you gain battery health? So if I'm looking at this correctly, this is the year 2021. I can't tell if this is the month or the day, but either way, this date here comes before this, and this number here is smaller than this number. Okay, I don't think that's helping your case because that graph is literally not making sense. How do you gain battery health? That's literally impossible. So, okay, I gotta point that out.
This is common for the iPhone XS, as the one I currently have is at 84% battery health with around 280 charge cycles. And my friend's iPhone XS was at 85% battery health 6 months after buying it new from Apple back in 2019. In the phone...
Ooh, that probably was just a bad battery. That might have been a bad battery. Yeah, it should not be degrading that fast. But then again, I want to talk more about battery degradation after we finish watching the video here.
Not heavily used in that amount of time either. Look on eBay. The iPhone XS's that you will find commonly have very degraded batteries, green tints on the display.
That's true. Green tints on the display? What? Never seen that, but then again, I don't really look on eBay.
Baseband failure. The green tint on the display was often caused by minor drops. Another drop-related issue was the baseband failing. This happens to a lot of iPhone XS's, but unlike other iPhones, there does not have to be a severe impact to cause this. This can happen from literally any drop. Even the slightest of drops could damage these devices' baseband, basically making them unusable and e-waste, as they are not able to be activated or used as a phone. This issue plagues many iPhone XS devices, and the Max is also plagued from these issues. And the display issues are actually more common on the iPhone XS Max for whatever reason.
Might be more common on the Max variant because it's a bigger, heavier phone.
Now, for some actual reasons to not buy an iPhone XS, even if you'd like to take the risks on the reliability issues. For one, it's quite literally the smallest upgrade an iPhone has ever received from Apple.
If you're comparing the 10 to the regular size XS, if you're comparing the 10 to the XS Max, well, you ask me, that's a, pardon the pun, but that's a big upgrade. In that regard, yeah, it's similar to the 10, but that's because the 10 was such a successful product that Apple wanted to basically milk the rest of it out that they possibly could, with a few minor improvements. Like, the 10 was such a huge hit, that basically they didn't want to make too many drastic changes just yet because, well, clearly you don't want to modify necessarily the most successful product too much. So could they have modified it a little more? Well, the regular XS, maybe, because literally nothing on that phone changed. Like, the cameras are basically the same. The displays are basically the same. Not much of that phone has really changed other than the color options, the chip, and the selfie cam actually did get an improvement, but, well, that's something that most people don't talk about. But yeah, I can see why people might argue that the 10 to the XS, yeah, is a small upgrade. But for people who care about big displays like I do, 10 to XS Max, that's a little bigger than people are actually making it out to be. There was also a few other features that we got with this, like, okay, slightly faster Face ID, but that comes with the fact that we got a slightly faster chip. Better water resistance. The iPhone 10 had IP67 water resistance. This is IP68. Again, like I mentioned, that gold color option. There was one thing that they modified with the camera, but I don't remember what it was. I think it had something to do with the telephoto lens, but there was a change that they did make to the camera system. It's not noticeable, but there was something they did. So they did make some minor changes, but they basically wanted to keep the same design because they clearly saw how successful the 10 was. And I honestly don't fault Apple for that. So calling it a basically meaningless upgrade, I think that's a stretch, but I can consider it to be a smaller upgrade compared to others. But meaningless? No, we're not going that far. It's not as bad. Oh yeah, as you can see right here, water resistance, it's listed right here in the video. Notice this says slightly better water resistant. Like it says water resistant at a depth of 2 meters for up to 30 minutes, while the 10 here is 1 meter up to 30 minutes.
Look at the iPhone 10 and look at the iPhone XS. Which is which? There are 2 ways to tell which is which. 1 is to check settings, and 2 is to look at the antenna placement.
3 would also be, well, if the phone is gold, then, well, yeah, it's definitely a 10S. But yeah, it's not necessarily the end of the world that the design really didn't change, because as you could see due to the previous year, they clearly had a huge success on their hands that they still wanted to milk out. Okay, and just because the design of it doesn't really change, that doesn't mean there's other meaningful changes going on behind the scenes. Like I mentioned, the faster Face ID, the better water resistance, and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, the real smallest upgrade I've ever seen was 6 to 6S, where basically the only changes we got are a new chip. I believe the Plus size got a 4K recording option. And what was the last thing? Oh yeah, they added the rose gold color. Okay, not really much has actually changed between the 6 and the 6S. Honestly, I've counted more changes between the 10 and the 10S compared to the 6 and the 6S. Apple's done this numerous times. 3G, 3GS. Did the design change? No. 4 to 4S. Did the design change? No. 5 to 5S. Did the design change? No. 6 to 6S. Did the design change? Again, no. So evidently the best way I can put it is whenever Apple brands a phone S, it means it has the exact same design as the previous model, but a little fancier because with some updated specs and maybe more additional features, but it's still going to feature the same design. Like, I can't think of another S product. I can't think of another S phone that Apple has made that didn't copy the non-S phone's design. I can't think of that. So why are we complaining this specifically with the 10 and 10S? They've done this in the past.
The iPhone XS has the same general design as the iPhone 10 with very minor changes. The iPhone 10 was a better phone, however, due to it being more reliable, which is not to say the iPhone 10 is the most reliable iPhone ever. It does have some display issues, but the iPhone XS has those exact issues as well. The iPhone XS has 2 notable changes. The A12 chip in the gold color.
Those are noticeable changes, but like I said, there's other changes like the better water resistance. Again, I'm repeating myself over and over again, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Personally, I prefer the black color on both devices, and the A12 has a higher heat output anyways, which annoys me. So, the iPhone 10 wins in that regard, and the 10 also wins in the reliability regard. The iPhone XS is quite literally the smallest upgrade ever, but
6 to 6S was even smaller. Actually, you know what? Technically, the 4 to the 4S has to be the smallest. Because literally, there was only one upgrade that everybody remembers, and I don't even know if there's anything else. But pretty much the only upgrade we've had 4 to 4S, the only feature we got was Siri. That's it. Again, it's not as minor of an upgrade as you're making it out to be, okay? And this is an S here. Of course, it's not necessarily going to be the biggest changes.
The iPhone XS Max exists, but there's still one catch. It was immediately, the next year, followed up by one of the best iPhones ever, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which was what the iPhone XS Max should have been. It was much, much better in all ways. Much better cameras, a battery that nobody could drain in a day, a reliable and durable design, and much more. The XS Max is once again defeated by an iPhone which even Apple couldn't follow up with for about 2 years.
Well, there's one way Apple could follow up with this. Like, for example, if they could ever clean up this disgusting mess on the back here, but they chose not to do that for some odd reason.
Let's talk about what many people generally say in defense to the iPhone XS. There are two main arguments. One is that theirs was fine, so every iPhone XS is fine.
I do not support that argument. I want to make this clear right now.
This is butterfly keyboard supporter type logic. Sure, you may have had a good one. You may have not dropped yours from even a minor height. But that's not to say that many other people haven't had horrible experiences with this phone. And the second argument, mainly used by tech people, is that the iPhone 7 had issues as well. Here's where my point comes into play.
Technically, you can say every other smartphone has issues as well. I mean, sure, the iPhone 7 had its own issues of people not wanting it because, the headphone jack's gone! It's the end of the world! Honestly, every smartphone has its issues. Like, there's even an issue with my specific model. Now, it's really minor, to be honest, but there's actually one noticeable thing that my phone has that I've been able to notice at least, but however, I only notice it when it's uncased. I'll describe more of that in just a minute. Technically, every smartphone has its issues. So, okay, I don't know why people would put in that argument, but okay.
The iPhone XS shares a lot of issues with the iPhone 7, one of which is the baseband issue. And the iPhone XS is newer than the 7 by 2 whole years, so the iPhone XS is bound to have many issues relating to age in 2 years as well. You can't defend a phone which is unreliable and was barely even an upgrade when it launched in 2018. Why do I hate the iPhone XS series so much personally? Because many people try to argue with me about how the iPhone XS is good, even after I've done hours of research, had plenty of personal encounters with the iPhone XS series, and have gotten other people's experience with the phone. I hate when people try to convince me something is good, even though I throw facts at them about the phone and show them proof. It's stupid logic, and the people who do this honestly have no idea about the phone, and probably have never used one for an extended period of time, especially used one enough to see the issues.
Considering that I've been using this one for 2 years without... No, I can't even think of a single hardware-related issue of this thing. I mean, I've had software bugs in the past, but it was only like a once-in-a-lifetime and then such, but I think I have to be an exception to this, because he's mentioned, have you ever used the XS Max for an extended period of time? For me to answer that question, yes, I've been using one for 2 years. There's that.
I have very little problems with the previous iPhone X from 2017. I've done my research, and I've argued with many people over this phone, and I still have yet to see the phone in a better light.
Well, considering some conversation, so Tabby Pears knows who I am. He knows that I daily drive the XS Max and such. However, we have gone through this part already, and he already understands that, yeah, I've really enjoyed my time with this. And honestly, he's confused about it. And I mean, judging by your experiences so far, yeah, I can see why you're confused about it. But I guess he can't really say that, well, he's never seen the XS Max in a better light before, because I mean, I'm now living proof that he's aware of that clearly begs to differ.
After using one in 2022. Yes, I used an iPhone XS in 2022. A random one. Not one from eBay. Just a random iPhone XS that I got from a place locally. It has issues. And the reason why the owners were getting rid of it was because the display didn't work. So after replacing the screen...
Yeah, that's a crack mark. Okay, so they did something to damage the display. So, yeah, there's a crack in the display right there. So, okay, that makes sense why the display might stop working, depending on how it was dropped or however that crack was caused. So, okay.
It has issues still. First, Face ID doesn't work. This could possibly be from a repair.
That's probably
and
what caused that.
The battery is very degraded and doesn't last long, as I've had someone say. Even though theirs has very low battery health, the battery still lasts long. But nope, even with my light usage and 290 charge cycles on the battery.
I would like to have a little clarification on light usage because, I mean, what is your typical usage? Like, what do you use the phone for when you're doing light usage? I just want some clarification like that. That would help your results be a little more convincing.
It does not last long at all.
Just minor critique.
It lasts about 3.5 hours on a single charge.
Ooh, that's
And
rough.
it's the first phone that I can say that I've had battery issues on, even after using the iPhone 12 mini for over a whole month.
Yeah, that's
and
rough.
having no issues with it. The other issue it has is the volume buttons are very stiff for whatever reason. The telephoto camera has a
Okay, that's being nitpicky. Stiff volume buttons, that's just being nitpicky at this point.
line straight through it, and that's even without any visible damage to the cap.
Ooh. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, that is weird. Wow, that is really weird.
That's just the proof that I needed to know that I'm not wrong at all about every iPhone XS having issues.
Well, I can't say every because, again, I'm an iPhone XS Max user, but just saying.
Because I would not try to give this phone issues. I wanted to be proven wrong. I wanted to not be the person that whines about the iPhone XS online. But no, every iPhone XS has issues, and I don't understand why these things were made with such low standards. Because this could have been
I can explain that once we're done with the video.
the best iPhone. I loved the iPhone X, my favorite iPhone ever, and I loved the 11 Pro. It was probably my second or third favorite iPhone ever. But the iPhone XS was the first iPhone that made me think, why am I using Apple products? It was the first iPhone that really made me consider if I was actually enjoying using my iPhone. This phone I got randomly is a prime example of all of these phones being horrible. I've had many experiences that you've heard. Have I had similar experiences with other iPhones? Partially. I've had light issues with other iPhones, such as the 7 home button dying or the 13 Pro's display being particularly weak.
Ooh.
But the XS Max fell 12 inches off of a tripod, and that was enough to shatter the back glass.
Okay, so he's mentioning drops or fall tests to measure durability. Those are very subjective. I don't consider those to validate durability, and it's because, well, drop tests or fall tests, whatever you want to call them, they're very subjective. The results of a drop test are always very subjective because it all depends on the weight of the phone, the velocity of which it's falling, the angle on which it lands on. Okay, it's so subjective. So because of that, I actually don't use drop tests to validate anything. So yeah, it sucks that your iPhone XS Max broke from a 1 foot drop, but I can probably say any phone could have broke from a 1 foot drop like that because drop tests are so subjective. They're not objective at all. So as much as you want to say, yeah, it verifies that, yeah, these have durability issues because, I mean, yeah, that's a short drop if I'm being honest. But again, drop tests are very subjective. They do not give objective results every single time. So I can't use this as validation. I hope you understand that.
12 inches from a tripod on my personal unit. This is not something that should happen, especially with the strongest glass ever claims that Apple made. Plus, it was flat concrete. There was absolutely no rocks or anything. It was...
Did you say concrete? Okay, dude, it doesn't matter if the concrete is flat or not. Concrete versus glass. Which do you think is gonna win? I'm willing to bet it's gonna be concrete, not glass. Usually when a phone drops on concrete, again, flat or not flat, it doesn't matter. It's subjective. Drop tests are all subjective. It all depends on how it lands on it. But yeah, concrete, that really doesn't help. That really does not help your case.
garage floor. I've dropped my 12 mini and 12 Pro Max down flights of hardwood stairs into walls multiple times, and no damage was done.
Again, drop tests are subjective, so I cannot verify this or validate this.
I got my iPhone 13 Pro from 13 feet onto concrete on its corner, and it was fine. I absolutely put my 11 through torture while using that thing, but the XS Max was the one phone that gave me durability issues more than any. All of these issues combined into one phone make the iPhone XS the worst iPhone I've ever used. I've been collecting evidence for my point since 2019, and I've collected enough to know that the iPhone XS deserves any and all of the hate that it gets. One last personal experience with the XS Max. My sister had one from December 2019 to July 2021. The phone recovery looped sometimes at random and had to be restored multiple times, and the baseband ended up dying. This was another encounter I've had with the XS Max specifically, and I ended up giving my sister my 12 Pro and trading the XS Max into Apple.
I'm sorry about
and
that.
upgrading
That
myself
sucks.
to a
That
12
really
Pro
does.
Max. Since then, that 12 Pro is still perfectly fine and working. Also, I would like to note that my sister used the 6S Plus from 2016 to 2019 with no issues other than the battery and a charge port. So this is not a user-specific issue or any issues of durability. This is all coming from my experiences that I've seen personally. I've had two 10Ss and a 10S Max that have broken, and my sister had a 10S Max that broke, all from one person's experience. My experience. And yes, I'm a tech guy, so I know more about iPhones than the average person, but this is just annoying. Every person I know with a 10S has had issues with it in some form or another.
I'm literally the first that counteracts this. I'm literally the first person he knows that actually had a good experience with the 10S. So
I've never seen one person without issues on a 10S. That phone is horrible, and that's why I can't recommend anybody even remotely consider a 10S. Now I have experiences from two people. First is my friend Elias or Meowtech. He's had multiple iPhone XS's. The first one was a XS Max 64GB Gold. He bought it used on November 11th, 2020.
okay, usually when you buy things used, that's not necessarily the best idea to do, and that's reason for that is because there's two general reasons why, well, people sell their devices. One, it's because, okay, and this unfortunately is kind of a rare instance, but it's the most innocent one. One, well, they're just done using it and they're ready for an upgrade. Okay, that's one of the reasons why they sell it. Two, and maybe they don't know this. Okay, there might be hidden things that they're not aware of. Maybe it's damaged in a way and they can't really use it, so they're going to try to pass it on and see if they can get any value out of it. So, yeah, buying used is already one of the worst things you can possibly do in terms of getting a good phone. It's kind of self-explanatory.
The device already had a broken Face ID from the previous owner simply from a normal drop that apparently caused it to stop working. Seems pretty accurate. The battery...
That could be the case with just about any phone, depending on how, again, drop tests are subjective, okay?
at 91% health, but it was apparently incorrect.
Again, more on battery health once we're done actually reacting to this.
Could be at 50% after recording on it for 30 minutes from, I assume, 100% at start.
So something I want to point out about that is recording video, especially, that's the heaviest, most demanding task you can do with your phone because, well, I mean, he doesn't really specify what type of resolution and frame rate he's recording at, but if you record at 4K 60, you are utilizing the camera, you are utilizing the A12 in this case, you are utilizing the processor very heavily because it has to process all of this information. You're utilizing the microphones. Depending on the lighting situation, you might be utilizing the flash. So recording is totally going to drain the battery. This is true of any phone, okay? It's the most power demanding task that you can have your smartphone do. Very power demanding. However, the thing that I'm not too sure about how accurate this is, it could be accurate. Again, I'm not entirely certain because no resolution or frame rate was specified. I don't know if the flash was enabled or not. Okay, there's just a few things that are missing from this description for me to completely validate this. So I'm not saying it's false, but I can't validate it.
The touchscreen also acted weird. It would randomly ghost touch and would be fixed by turning the phone on and off. Sound is really a lot like mine.
I've had that issue on other devices before. Like, for example, on my iPod Touch, it ran iOS 12. Oh, wait, this is 2020, but it basically No, it was iOS 11. Basically, it's been plagued with an issue where, for some odd reason, I'd touch the display and basically nothing happens. And then the display would act as if I was touching it, but my fingers weren't even holding the device. It's done weird stuff like that before. I'm not too sure if that's hardware or software specific, but because I've seen it on other devices, especially older ones too, I'm more inclined to believe this is a software issue. But then again, like I said, I'm more inclined to believe this. And again, I don't know what software this is running at the time. It's 2020, but evidently the community that Tabby pairs along with all of his other friends, they don't really seem to be into upgrading to the latest iOS and such. So, and I did have this issue occur a couple times in iOS 12, so I'm not entirely certain it's hardware. It is possible though. It is possible, but I'm not certain.
His second iPhone XS, I actually remember when he got. It's a 64 gigabyte gold unit. He bought it in December 2021 with no issues used. The battery health dropped from 86 to 79% within 3 months of use. It had 551 cycles when he got it, and it reached 602 cycles when the battery health dropped to 79, although it seemed inaccurate as the battery still lasted about the same as a XS in the mid to high 80s. The back glass apparently cracked from being thrown at the wall from a short distance.
Okay. Once again, I know these are subjective, but okay. I need to ask, who throws their phone at a wall when they're either, to put this as politely as possible, not being an idiot with it, or not being mad and upset? So it's who throws their phone at the wall without being mad or upset or just being an idiot? Who does that? I don't know.
And I remember when that happened too. He apparently has never had a phone crack from that distance or that throw before.
Well, like I said, drop tests are very subjective.
And it wasn't even that hard of a throw. And after 3.5 months, the baseband is dead, and it's stuck on searching. There was no severe impact to cause that. It was random. And his opinion on the XS overall is that he thinks it's an average phone, but he would highly suggest against buying the device used or new. And he says, if you're looking for a XS, buy a 10. If you want the XS Max, get the 11 Pro Max. If you already own one, you may want to sell it or trade it in before it develops issues such as his, and many others. And he says, if you have had it for a while and it's still working, you may as well keep it, but don't expect it to last, as I've had that happen with my XS, where it was working, then it just died randomly. Next experience is from Ginger Prince's. He's had 3 iPhone XS's that were bought brand new from the Apple Store. All 3 of them suffered from the well-known baseband issue. None of the 3 that he had were able to be used for more than 4 months each, due to the fact that they all failed because of the baseband issue itself.
Jeez.
2 of the iPhone XS's that he had also suffered from sudden random OLED damage internally. He never dropped it or put excessive weight on either of them. Both had a green line of dead pixels on the right side of the OLED panel. Sound familiar from these eBay listings that we've saw? The iPhone XS, in his opinion, was a decent phone if you forget about the common issues for a moment. But in all reality, it was just a minor upgrade from the iPhone X. And he says, just to clarify, I did not buy the iPhone XS 3 times. He had one phone replaced under Apple Care Plus 2 times. Sounds pretty similar to some other issues, especially the baseband issue, as my friend Meowtech also had that same issue with the baseband. With all this considered, what is the market for this phone like? If the device is in great condition, the iPhone XS sells for around $288 US average.
Really? Oh, this is on eBay, but honestly, I've actually seen it more expensive than that. I mean, is it inflation or something? But I don't think so. I've never seen prices that low for an average, at least. But yeah, I've usually seen all the averages above like $300. Guess eBay doesn't get a lot of good condition 10S's from the looks of it.
The iPhone X sells for about $244 US on average.
That sounds about accurate. Yeah, that sounds about accurate.
For the extra money, you don't get anything actually good. I can also suggest the iPhone XR, which is around $180 average, although I didn't completely research that.
Yeah, I wanted to say you're being very, very lenient on that. That is not the average price of an iPhone XR, even today.
It has the same internals as the XS if you really want that extra power, or those iOS features that Apple decided to lock the 10 and below out of, with way less issues and a lower price point, more colors, and a bigger but lower resolution LCD display. If you want a better camera, the regular iPhone 11's camera is better than the XS's, in my opinion, in a much cheaper form.
I'll say it's more flexible, not necessarily better, but it's more flexible because not only can you still, well, zoom in, unfortunately you are going to lose some quality when you zoom in, but now you get more flexibility with that ultra wide. So I can see his point as of why he can argue this is a better camera. Again, it's adding more flexibility instead of better quality. So just wanted to point that out. It's better if you're not zooming in on things a lot. Me, on the other hand, I actually use the telephoto more frequently than I thought. Yeah, evidently I need that telephoto lens. I use the telephoto lens more than I do the ultra wide on any phone. Like my previous phone did have an ultra wide lens on it, but I used that way less than the main lens. And compared to using my iPhone now, I use the telephoto lens a lot more than I actually thought. So compared to my experiences back then and today, I use the telephoto more than I do the ultra wide. So it kind of depends on your needs. Do you want flexibility? Well, get the 11's camera with the ultra wide. Do you want better quality? Then get a 10 or 10S or something with a telephoto, because that will help with zoom quality.
And honestly, let me just say this, buy a 13 Pro. Or whatever is the latest at the time you're watching this.
That is very fair.
It's much better than any of these used devices.
Well, duh.
Trust me on that one. Even if you're anti-Apple, just save for a 13 mini or an SE3 because they're better than these old phones that I've been talking about. Technology advances faster than anything nowadays. And I really don't think you'd want to be stuck with some old phone from 2017 or 2018 for your 2022 tasks.
And that is very fair. I agree.
Guys, this video took me weeks to make. I started this project in mid-March, and it's almost mid-April now. And I'm finishing up and uploading this, hopefully in the next couple of days. If you enjoyed this video, I appreciate a like, and if you want to see more content similar to this, you can check out my other content and subscribe if you'd like. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in more videos in the future.
Alright, so that is going to wrap up the reaction to that video right there. So, a little cynical on a lot of the takes, but I mean, yeah, his experiences speak for themselves. Alright, so I'm now going to talk about those quick things that I wanted to talk about after reacting to the video. So the first thing I actually wanted to talk about was battery health. He brings this up a lot and saying, battery health tends to be worse on the XS and XS Max compared to our newer phones and some older ones as well. For the most part, sure, it could have been the batteries themselves, like that one where the battery health was just so weird and wonky. I actually think that phone really did have a battery issue. Okay, I'm not joking. I genuinely think that iPhone XS or XS Max actually had a battery issue. But I want to talk about battery health and how it's calculated. And that's the thing. It's really hard to actually calculate battery health because, like drop tests, battery usage and degradation is also subjective. It all depends on how heavy you're using the battery, the temperatures it's exposed to, what is its general state of charge. Okay, I mean, it's not easy to actually determine this number. There's not really a good way to actually do it. Apple has at least come up with a method to get you a relative idea on the possibility of degradation. But believe it or not, that number that you see on any iPhone, it's not accurate. It's never accurate. And it's because it is really hard to actually make the perfect algorithm to actually determine battery health. So I do want to point that out. Yeah, it may seem worse on others. That doesn't necessarily mean all the other iPhones have better batteries just because, the battery health is at a higher percentage compared to over X amount of time versus iPhone XS battery health percentage over same X amount of time. That number is really hard to generate. So because of that, that it's not particularly accurate. I wouldn't really go off of battery health to describe battery issues, but yeah, if your phone is not lasting like 3 hours like he mentioned, yeah, okay, that's a bad battery. That should totally be replaced, okay? I agree with him on that aspect. That specific iPhone probably had a bad battery, but in terms of battery health, it's not an accurate measurement of actually measuring the battery health, ironically enough. It only gives you a rough estimate. I'm lucky that after my 2 years of mixed light and heavy usage, like today, I'm probably going to be using this iPhone more heavily than other days because, again, the camera and such. But if we take a look at my current battery health after 2 years of usage, as you can see, it's at 90% battery health, which is pretty good for 2 years of mixed light and heavy usage. And what I mean by heavy usage is I'm using that camera and I'm using it for quite a bit. But once again, that number, it might not necessarily be accurate. It could potentially be 85% in reality. It could potentially be 80%. Who knows? It's not an accurate measurement, okay? As much as we want it to be, I want to advise everyone that the battery health is not actually an accurate measurement. Okay, so now I want to address the one question that he asked. How could have Apple possibly made a phone that had this many consistent issues in his experience? Now, due to my experience with the XS and XS Max, as well as learning other people's experience, I know a couple people who have used the iPhone XS or XS Max as well, and to my knowledge, they've had a positive experience with it. I know this one statement that in the video that he made, he believes that every single iPhone XS and XS Max is bad. I know for a fact it's false because, again, I'm living proof. I've been using this one for 2 years. There's not really any hardware issues. Like, the only minor issue I can actually think of is actually a fitment issue between the display. I'm noticing when I rub against this edge here, I'm slightly grabbing the metal rail, but that's such a minor issue. I mean, first of all, if I were to measure that distance, it's a little loose, but it's probably still within spec if you understand manufacturing tolerances. And again, it's been this way for, honestly, I think it was this way for about a year at least. I recall it brushing my finger along that, and it's been this way for about a year. But honestly, ever since it did get this way last year, it hasn't really changed. So I'm not really worried about it. But I want to talk about this cool thing called quality control. So you're wondering, how is it possible to consistently get phones this bad? Well, allow me to introduce you to a familiar topic that I have to go through every single day at my job in the workshop: quality control. So how did these bad devices make it through quality control? Is probably what he's thinking. Well, here's the thing. In actual quality inspections, not every single product actually gets tested. You might be thinking, what? Well, why not? And the reason for that is actually because if Apple were to test literally every single iPhone that has come out of the factory for quality issues and such, it would take so much time to actually do that inspection. So much time would be lost. So much money can also be lost. I mean, you might think, why would Apple, of all people, really need money these days? But once again, this is in the manufacturing world. Time is money, okay? The less time you spend dealing with issues and such, the more money you make. And inspecting these things is obviously going to be a pain considering the sheer number that Apple makes. Now, if they were a smaller company, yeah, they probably could actually test every single unit if they weren't shipping as much. But Apple ships more smartphones than basically any other company. So to test every single device that's coming out of the factory, that's literally going to be impossible. It's going to take so much time to actually do that. And Apple needs to get these devices in stores, in warehouses, in people's hands. It's just not feasible to test literally every single device. So the way quality inspections actually happen, they make a batch of iPhones, and then they pick one iPhone out of the batch. If that iPhone passes quality inspection, then they usually pass the entire batch. Now, if something in that quality inspection turns out to be negative or just a no pass, then usually what happens is they inspect the entire batch. But they first have to just pull a random iPhone out of the batch. It's not subjective or anything. They just randomly pull an iPhone out of the batch and then they test it. If it passes inspection, then, well, usually it means the entire batch is good. And this is generally true in the manufacturing world. But when they randomly pull that iPhone out of that batch to inspect and it doesn't pass inspection, then they actually inspect the entire batch to check, okay, are there any other issues that have this? Is this consistent? So that is how quality inspections work. So sure, technically, yeah, those iPhones that you and those other people have had, they've technically passed quality inspection because they were in a batch of iPhones that also passed quality inspection. I know it's a pass asterisk situation, but that's literally how quality inspections work. That's how quality control works. You just cannot inspect every single device. It would take way too much time to actually inspect every single device, and that's just not efficient. The biggest reason why I actually think that Tabby Pears and his friends managed to constantly get these bad devices, first of all, some were purchased used. That's pretty much a good way to actually get a not good device. This is why I don't buy my electronics used. Whenever I buy any of my electronics, I always buy it in brand new condition. I never buy it used, especially if I plan on using it for work. So because of that, yeah, this XS Max was bought brand new. My 16-inch MacBook Pro was bought brand new. Unfortunately, my 2011 MacBook Pro was not new, and that's because I had a very low budget. But ever since that experience, I've basically confirmed, yeah, basically if you buy used, that's a pretty good way to get yourself a not good product. So to the devices that were used, yeah, I would kind of expect them to break, because usually when you buy something used, it's probably because it's about to break anyways. And this is true about just about any iPhone, so it's not specific to the XS Max. But for the phones that you did buy brand new, how do they pass quality inspection? I literally just explained that whole story, and I'm sorry that you guys have ended up with those iPhones that were pass asterisk. I don't like people having negative experiences, but I can't change the fact that they happen, okay? That one argument that Tabby Pears had brought up that he absolutely hates is, well, mine's fine, so every other device has to be, like, mine has to be fine. Well, sure, my iPhone XS Max is fine. It's great. I love it. But that does not change the fact that there are other iPhone XS's and XS Maxes that people have had great experiences with. And in Tabby Pears' case, yeah, I am really sorry that you have had such a negative experience. I really wish you would have had better, but again, I'm sorry these things have happened. And one more quality thing that I want to bring up, he brings up the baseband issue a lot, and yeah, evidently it's clearly a problem that all of these guys have. From the looks of it, due to how he's describing how the baseband has been failing, it seems like a wear and tear issue. That's not something you can easily quality inspect. Like, sure, you can grab a few test units and then repeatedly do some wear and tear and such, but again, wear and tear is entirely subjective to the environment it's currently existing in. Wear and tear tests are really subject to the environment that the device is currently existing in. So it's hard to measure that aspect as well. So I'm sure, yes, it's probably a common issue with this thing, though honestly, I'm not really concerned due to, oh geez, I'm a clumsy fool with this thing, to be honest. Like, you won't believe how many times I've dropped this thing. And we'll take a look at it. The glass is intact on both the back and the front. Face ID is working like a charm. The device still performs very well. The camera looks awesome. I mean, you guys watch my YouTube videos that are not being recorded on the MacBook at the moment. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, but I still have to disagree with Tabby Pears on every single thing he mentioned about the iPhone XS Max, or the XS in general, just being a bad phone. Because to be honest, that's just not true. I've used this phone for 2 years. I love it. It's been great. It's been reliable. I've never really had any issues with this. I know other people in my personal life who also use a XS or a XS Max. For example, the middle school principal at my local school upgraded to a XS Max from an iPhone 5S. And I have to say, wow, that phone's pretty impressive. She's really happy with that iPhone, so good for her. She's enjoying it. My aunt actually uses an iPhone XS Max for work. Her job provided her that iPhone XS Max that she's currently using, and to my knowledge, that thing is still intact. Like, she's never mentioned that it's been unreliable or anything, and she actually used to carry both an iPhone and an Android. Her iPhone was provided to her by work because evidently her job requires an iPhone for whatever reason, but at the time she personally preferred Android, so she also carried a Samsung. Well, ever since she got that iPhone 7 Plus from her job, she actually had switched fully to iPhone. So when her job gave her an upgrade from her 7 Plus Plus to her XS Max, she also bought a regular iPhone XS. So she daily drove both of those iPhones. And to my knowledge, she enjoyed it. And during the entire time she owned both of those devices, she only still holds onto the XS Max right now, but the XS. But when she held onto both devices, they held up well. They were very reliable. No complaints. Unfortunately, that XS Max ended up having a, well, bit of a smash. It was smashed by a basket. I can't recall exactly what happened to it, but oh, that thing took abuse. I can't remember if it was smashed by a ball or something, or if it fell out of the new owner's pocket during an ATV ride, because I recall that same owner had a phone fall out of her pocket and lost it during an ATV ride. So I'm not entirely sure what actually caused it, but I do know it was a severe event that damaged that phone. It still worked. It's just the glass was cracked. So yeah, a severe event damaged that thing, but the phone still worked. So I guess I want to leave on this one note, okay? I understand that these bad things have happened, and I am very sorry that these bad things have happened. I am acknowledging that these bad things have happened. But does this really change my thoughts on using the XS? Not really. And the best reason why I can think of why I just not changing my mind on this is because I know so many other users who have gotten this, well, not this exact phone that I'm holding right here, but the XS and XS Max in general. And to my knowledge, barely anybody had really any complaints with it. Other than, sure, yeah, it's not really that different from the iPhone 10 and such and like that. But to my knowledge, so many people have actually been very happy with this phone. And why he might not know about people having a good time with this phone is it could potentially have something to do with the fact that he's subjected to a crowd where, yeah, they're a lot more technical, they care a lot more about tech and such. So when these things happen, yeah, it sucks. And yeah, a lot of his friends have had this issue, but those are his friends. What about other people that maybe he's not necessarily friends with, but people he might possibly have a conversation with in terms of smartphones and such? He hasn't really brought that up. So it's probably possible that he's just never interacted with anybody who's had a positive experience with the iPhone XS. So it could explain his hate for the device. And yeah, I am sorry that you've had such a terrible experience, but just because you have had a terrible experience with multiple XS's and XS Maxes, I don't think this necessarily means you should hate the product as in its entirety. Like, just because you've had a bad experience with, I guess I should count 4 of these things, this doesn't account for the millions that they ship. Now, sure, yeah, 4, that's 4 in a row. That's kind of nerve-wracking if I'm being honest, but you gotta remember, Apple ships millions of these things, okay? Millions. It is really hard to make millions of the same product over and over again. People think that it's easy, but if you're actually in the manufacturing industry, like I am, you'll know making millions of the same product is anything but easy. So, okay, yeah, Tabby Pears, please don't hate me for this. I basically just wanted to critique and point out a few things, like, yeah, for example, quality inspections. That's how they happen. I'm pretty sure that might not be something he necessarily knows. And I wanted him to know especially that the battery health thing is not perfectly accurate, because honestly, it's really hard to develop an algorithm to get an accurate measurement out of it. You can get close, but you're probably not going to get exact ever. And due to how I've seen other people monitor the battery health on their iPhones especially, yeah, it's very clear that it's really hard to measure it. So yeah, I just wanted to point some of these things out. I also wanted to critique some things that didn't really make much sense. Like, for example, I looked in that degradation record, and it didn't make sense how for some odd reason the degradation, well, decreased instead of increased. That didn't make sense. So yeah, please don't hate me. I just want to critique and, well, allow everyone to make better videos. So now that you know some of these things, hopefully this allows you to make better videos. Hopefully, I mean, it probably won't change your opinion on the XS and XS Max considering your experiences, but hopefully your opinion is at least less negative about the whole phone in general. And yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for putting up with these critiques, and I hope you improve in the near future with this kind of stuff. So, all right, thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. Link to Tabby Pears' channel is in the description. Be sure to give him the credit that he deserves. My name is Alpha DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out.